Hey, what is up, you guys? My name is Janet, and today I wanted to talk about how to be a mover in our world. Our series is called Movers, Makers, and Shakers. And I guess what we mean by that is, how do we become people who move towards need, who make a difference, and who shake up the status quo? You guys know that video we watched at the beginning of our program, where we went through the timeline of people who moved towards others in Jesus' name over the course of history? I love that that video ended on the greatest mover, and the greatest move of all time being Jesus, coming down to the world and saving us from our broken selves. Jesus definitely changed my life with that very move. And you know what is also incredible is that Jesus doesn't just move towards people that are easy to get along with, or who are good, or who liked him first. Actually, it's the opposite. Jesus moved towards people that are looked down upon and rejected from society. Jesus was the kind of guy who was comfortable at the center of a raucous crowd of tax collectors and sinners, or in conversation with a woman who no one else wanted to be seen with. One picture of this that I wanted to talk about today is the story of Jesus and Zacchaeus. The story is recorded in the Bible in Luke 19. Jesus is walking through a town and, as usual, is surrounded by a crowd of people. Because it's so crowded, there's this man named Zacchaeus who, because of his height, can't see him. So the man Zacchaeus runs and climbs a tree to see Jesus. So let's just pause, and I want to give you some context. Tax collectors in those days were not like a highly regulated IRS-like thing. They were Jews who volunteered to betray their own people by collecting taxes to give to the oppressive government, the Romans. And even worse, tax collectors would often overtax their own people and keep the extra for themselves. So they were pretty universally hated. Zacchaeus, the text notes, was a chief tax collector, which means he was next level. It means he was rich. He was good at exploiting people, and he probably had been for a long time. So he was probably even more hated, even more condemned by the people around him. But when Jesus comes through town, Zacchaeus wants to see him. And it makes you wonder, why? Why would a guy like that want so badly to see a penniless traveling teacher? Well, maybe Zacchaeus was tired of being the bad guy, tired of being hated and feeling shame and guilt. Maybe he had heard about this magnetic Jesus guy who was really unlike the religious figures of his time. I don't know, but whatever it was, Zacchaeus wanted to see Jesus so bad that he was willing to do the terribly undignified thing of climbing a tree in the middle of a crowded place to do it. But it ends up being totally worth it. Jesus stops under that tree and calls out to him and says, "Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, for I must stay at your house today." Jesus wants to stay at his house. It would have been a pretty intimate thing to do. Just imagine someone coming up to you and saying, "I need to stay at your house today." It's like when your best friend calls you and says, "Hey, can I come over?" But they're actually already at your house. It was that kind of familiarity. And when Zacchaeus receives that kind of love, when Jesus reaches out to be close to him, to get proximate, it changes his life. It changes everything about who he is. Zacchaeus responds with joy and starts giving out his property left and right. He essentially bankrupts himself by giving back 4 times what he stole from people. And Jesus says joyfully, "Today salvation has come to this house, since he also is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost." I think it's interesting when we think about saving the world or saving people, it can feel like a terribly daunting task. But I think the pattern that Jesus sets for us to imitate is simple. Just move towards people, get close to them, stay at their house, treat them like the friends that you can't wait to see. And when people experience genuine care, something in their heart changes. And that's why I believe getting proximate to people is the best way to change the world. I think one man who represents this is Bryan Stevenson, who started the Equal Justice Initiative. The Equal Justice Initiative is a nonprofit organization based in Montgomery, Alabama, that provides legal representation to prisoners who may have been wrongfully convicted of crimes, poor prisoners without effective representation, and others who may have been denied a fair trial. Bryan Stevenson said this once. "There is power in proximity," Stevenson said. "Get close to people and communities who are at risk, and stay close. We don't have to have the answers. Instead, we have to want to get close. From far away, we can't create meaningful solutions. When we step into the places where there is despair, neglect, and abuse, that is where we are informed, energized, and feel the empathy that drives us to change the world." Maybe we don't feel like we can all be like Bryan Stevenson, but I think that we can all start somewhere. For me, I just started by trying to build one friendship. In the fall semester of my senior year of college, I had the chance to do some flyering outreach on my campus, and I met a girl who was a freshman international student from China. Rather than just walking past, I was able to stop and have a genuine conversation with her about her life. Throughout the rest of the semester, I got to hang out with her and get to know her better, trying my best to love her by spending time listening to what she was going through and sharing in her burdens. I invited her to my church's Sisters' Night, and after giving her a small gift and words of encouragement, she started tearing up and told me that she had never experienced this level of care and connection with someone outside her family, and that she was incredibly appreciative of our friendship during a time of hardship being in a new country. From this relationship, I was able to experience the joy of loving on someone who I may never have become close with if it weren't for the gospel, and witnessing the love of God fill her heart and transform her perspective towards Christianity. My hope for all of you who hear this is that you would become people who can draw near to others, because I truly believe that if you do so, you can change the world.